The screen is black. You hear ragged breathing. Then a flat, mechanical voice echoes in the darkness. The subject will remain still during the procedure. The copper must be heated. Now you see her. Naked in the middle of an October forest. Her arms wrapped around her knees. Her eyes not vacant, but staring into something else. Something you can't see. Her skin is covered in symmetrical cuts. Lines so precise they look like they were etched by compass and straight edge. This isn't the body of a madwoman, it's a diagram. Her name was Margaret Hayes, and in the fall of 1823, 3 trained doctors, men of science and reason, examined her and refused to continue. One of them fled the state. The second burned his notes. The third never spoke again. The records were buried. The forest swallowed the rest. Until now. What happened to Margaret is not just a tale of one woman's suffering. It is a window into the darkest ambitions of early American medicine, into minds that saw the human body as canvas, experiment, and prison all at once. You're about to witness a descent into the kind of knowledge that changes you. You won't be the same. And once you hear what was done in that farmhouse laboratory, you'll understand why they tried to erase it. Millfield, Ohio, 1823, a forgotten corner of the American frontier where men fought soil and silence, and the line between wilderness and civilization was measured in footsteps. Margaret Hayes lived with her father on a lonely patch of farmland 12 miles from the nearest town. They were quiet people, bookish even. He was a former schoolteacher. She was an unusually intelligent young woman, fluent in Latin medical terms, curious about anatomy, and known to ask questions the local doctor found uncomfortable. In a time when women were expected to birth, bake, and bury, Margaret read journals from Philadelphia physicians and debated the merits of galvanic stimulation. And then she vanished. No blood, no note, no footprints leading away. For 3 months, no one knew where she was. Until the morning of October 23rd, when 2 hunters found her naked and muttering about the chair with leather straps and electrical stimulus. That was the beginning of the unraveling, but the real question wasn't where she had been, it was why she had gone. Why a girl like Margaret, sharp, deliberate, controlled, would willingly disappear into the woods and become a subject. Someone trained her, conditioned her, rewired her. And it wasn't done in chaos. It was done in order. Dr. Samuel Hartwell had seen death. Gunshot wounds from the War of 1812, childbirth torn open in winter cabins, disease that rotted the mind before the body. But nothing prepared him for what Margaret became. She didn't speak like a victim. She recited, "The subject exhibits compliance under electrical excitation. Proceeding with copper insertion protocol. The doctor is pleased." Hartwell examined her under candlelight. 17 distinct incision maps, symmetrical, measured, deliberate. Not a scratch out of place. Whoever had done this wasn't experimenting out of madness. They were following a plan. Each cut corresponded to a nerve cluster or muscle group. It was surgical, but it was more than that. Margaret wasn't flinching from the pain. She was expecting it. At times, she would position herself in certain poses, as if waiting for the next procedure, lying down, head tilted, arms extended, like a ritual, like programming. And when the doctor didn't respond, she grew agitated. The work must continue. The measurements must be completed. That wasn't madness. That was training. Someone had reached into this girl's mind and rewired the logic gates of her identity. Hartwell had studied medicine his whole life. But this was something older, something cold, something calculated. Her journal was the first key. Recovered days after her return, torn, waterlogged, but not lost. The early pages were innocent. Rainfall patterns, planting schedules, books she wished to read. But then the tone shifted. June 28, 1823. I believe Galvani's theory holds merit. If electricity can animate the limbs of a frog, it might do the same to dormant human nerves. The Philadelphia journals confirm this. July 1st. I have been invited to observe advanced medical procedures, a rare opportunity. My education makes me a suitable assistant. Father must not know. July 12th. The final legible entry. I give my consent freely. The sessions begin tomorrow. Pain is temporary. Knowledge is eternal. She thought she was volunteering, but volunteers are allowed to leave. Margaret never came back. The handwriting changed, the vocabulary sharpened, and by the end, it wasn't even a journal, it was a logbook. She was becoming something else. Dr. Hartwell turned the final page, and the weight in his chest told him the truth. Margaret didn't just experience the procedure, she was convinced of its necessity. Someone had broken the barrier between flesh and obedience. And now she wasn't the same person who had walked into that forest. She was a programmed subject, a machine in a girl's skin. The second key came stitched into her dress, hidden, deliberate, meant to be found, but only by someone who could understand it. A fragment of fine parchment tucked in the lining, written in an elegant clinical hand. Subject must be restrained. Copper probes inserted no deeper than 1/4 inch. Sessions not to exceed 30 minutes. Allow recovery. Maintain precision. This wasn't some backwards butcher. This was someone trained, someone wealthy, someone with access to tools and ink not found in frontier towns. Hartwell knew what it meant. This was no spontaneous crime. This was a project. He asked around quietly, carefully, who had been in the area that summer. Any traveling physicians? No one remembered strangers, except for Samuel Brennan. He lived closest to the Hayes farm and mentioned something others had ignored. Lights. Appearing nightly in the windows of the abandoned Westfield estate 5 miles north. Always the same window, always the same time. PM. For 2 months straight. Then, nothing. The lights vanished the week before Margaret reappeared. It wasn't coincidence. That house wasn't empty. It was a laboratory, a cathedral of pain. And someone had conducted ritualized experimental behavioral surgery on a human mind. Not to torture, to transform. October 30th, 1823. Dr. Hartwell made the journey alone. The road to the Westfield property was more deer trail than path, twisting through gnarled trees and thick mist that seemed to listen. By the time he arrived, the sun was low, and the house sat like a carcass, swallowed by the woods. But it wasn't abandoned. The front door, ajar, the hinges, freshly oiled. Inside, dust patterns told a story. What had been cleaned, what had been walked, what had been used. Then he found the back room, and everything changed. A crude operating table dominated the center, thick leather straps at the wrists, ankles, waist, throat. Blood had soaked the wood black, not splattered, absorbed. Nearby, a voltaic pile, glass jars wired to copper instruments designed to deliver controlled electrical current. Not just tools of pain, tools of alteration, pinned to the wall, hand-drawn anatomical diagrams of a woman's body labeled with cold precision. The incisions matched Margaret's scars exactly, angles, depths, sequences. It was as if someone had mapped out how to dissect not just the body, but the soul. On the table near the window, a journal, open, waiting, page after page in that same cold hand, and one phrase repeated. Chips again and again. Subject M compliant. Results promising. Proceed. The journal was bound in black leather, stitched with surgical thread, the kind used in hospitals, not homes. The first page was dated March 3rd, 1823, months before Margaret vanished. And it began with one chilling line. Behavioral obedience can be engineered. Free will is not sacred, merely unrefined. Hartwell turned the pages with trembling fingers. Each entry chronicled the development of a system, one based on precise physical trauma, electrical interruption of memory circuits, and reward deprivation cycles. It was not written like theory. It was written like procedure. Subject M shows increased docility after third sequence, fear response muted, recitation of assigned phrases successful, eye movement tracked and minimal. Further in, she now refers to herself in third person, has ceased resisting commands, hunger used as control mechanism effective, sleep cycles monitored, lucid periods are brief but decreasing. Then came the most terrifying entry. She wept when given the mirror, not from pain, from confusion. She asked, "Is that still me?" Hartwell stopped. That was the moment he knew. They hadn't just hurt Margaret. They had rewired her humanity. She wasn't a victim. She was a template. And the journal wasn't about her. It was a manual for building more. The final section of the journal was marked with a red thread, stitched into the spine as if to warn or to signal. Inside, Hartwell found a list. 4 names, 4 women. Margaret Hayes was only the third. Each name was followed by dates, abduction, observation, correction, and, final note, deployed, not rescued, not released. Deployed, like a tool, a weapon, a vessel. Hartwell scanned the names. 2 were already marked deceased. 1 still had an active address. That address was in Pennsylvania, and it matched a report he'd read just weeks earlier, an unexplained disappearance of a midwife and 2 children in a coal mining village. No suspects, no leads. Only a single witness said the woman smiled too much and didn't blink. Hartwell closed the book, heart pounding. This wasn't just some sadistic game. It was a network, organized, funded, hidden. Somewhere beneath the surface of American society, a group was crafting obedient humans, not to kill, not to heal, but to replace. Replace what, exactly? He didn't know. But the next morning, the journal disappeared from his satchel. No break-in, no mess, just gone. And in its place, a note. You were never meant to read this. November 12, 1823. Pennsylvania. The address from the journal led Hartwell to a village called Dagger's Hollow, if it could even be called that. 12 homes, 1 inn, a church with no steeple, and no children in sight. He asked about the midwife. Locals fell silent, eyes dropping to their boots. One finally whispered, "She tends the sick at the old sanatorium up on Grief Hill." That building had been closed for years, condemned. But at dusk, a thin line of smoke rose from its chimney. Hartwell approached. Inside, the air smelled of damp rot and something sterile, bleach, maybe, or lye. In the center of the main hall stood a woman in a nurse's apron. Her face was calm, her hands folded, her eyes wide, too wide. She greeted him without moving her lips. "Do you require correction?" Hartwell froze. It was her, the 4th name. Her voice was soft but metallic, like memory echoed through iron. She walked him to the basement. Inside, 6 beds, all full. 6 women, each strapped, each humming quietly, each with a different name carved into her wrist. And then he turned and saw the 7th bed. Empty. Labeled Hartwell. The moment Hartwell saw his name carved into the frame of that 7th bed, something ancient shifted inside him. Not fear, not yet. It was recognition, like some part of him had always known he would end up here. The nurse stepped behind him, slow and silent. A silver needle gleamed in her hand, longer than standard, too refined for medicine. Hartwell backed away, voice shaking. "Why is my name there?" She answered in that same mechanical calm. "You've observed too much. You resist. You remember." Then she smiled. "Now you'll forget." He grabbed a rusted tray, smashed it against the wall, and fled. Her footsteps behind him were light, rhythmic, programmed, as if even her pursuit followed a script. He burst into an old operating room. There, beneath a dust-covered sheet, he found files, not just on Margaret, not just the others, but hundreds of profiles, and on the last page was a form. Subject 301, Hartwell, Elias. Recommended adjustment, frontal interruption, projected compliance time, 18 hours. Hartwell finally understood. They hadn't just chosen him. They had built the path that led him here. Every clue, every whisper, had been engineered, and he was never the investigator. He was the next experiment. Hartwell stared at the file like it was a mirror showing not his reflection, but his programming. He wasn't hunting a case. He was the case. Every question he'd asked, every step he took, was part of a design, not his own. The walls began to hum. A low frequency, almost like a lullaby for machines. From the hallway, the nurse appeared again, but now there were others behind her. Same aprons, same calm, same glassy eyes. They moved in unison, like puppets strung to the same rhythm. Hartwell turned back to the files and grabbed one final thing. A small brass key, tucked behind his own dossier. No label, no markings. Just cold weight and possibility. He sprinted through the dark hallways, turning every lock he could find, until finally a panel slid open in the wall. Behind it, a stairwell, cracked, narrow, but real. He plunged downward, the sound of shuffling feet behind him growing fainter. At the bottom was a tunnel, rail tracks, long abandoned, covered in soot and sorrow. He walked for hours, then days, until the tunnel led him back to the world. But something came with him. And every now and then, at night, he hears the hum. Hartwell made it back to Philadelphia looking like a man who had wrestled death and lost something deeper than life. He didn't speak of Dagger's Hollow, not at first, but he couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he'd see the seventh bed, empty, waiting, calling. He started hearing things. The soft hum, the metallic voice whispering, "Do you require correction?" Worse still, he began losing time, waking up in alleys, writing strange numbers in his notebook with no memory of doing so. One day, he discovered he'd mailed 8 blank letters to an address that didn't exist. Then came the dreams. Long white corridors, steel doors marked with names he didn't know but felt like family. Always ending with the same image, his own face, but older. Blank, obedient. Desperate, Hartwell returned to the journal. There, in a margin, was a new message, written in his own handwriting. The system doesn't erase you. It rewrites you, piece by piece. That's when he understood. The nurse wasn't just a person. She was part of a program. And once you're marked, you don't escape. You only delay the update. Hartwell knew he had only one option left: interfere with the program. Not run, not hide. Disrupt it, from the inside. He started hunting down others who had been at Dagger's Hollow. Some were dead, some missing. But 3 remained, each with strange scars on their temples, and each speaking the same fragmented phrases. Correction must be accepted. Repetition ensures obedience. The 7th bed opens only inward. One of them, a woman named Eloise Granger, had once been a nurse at a nearby asylum. She told Hartwell the horrifying truth. There was no real Dagger's Hollow anymore. The facility had burned down in 1912. But the program never stopped. It moved, migrated, like a parasite, attaching itself to buildings, records, people, digital now, hidden, buried inside hospital networks, AI therapy bots, even sleep monitoring apps. It didn't need walls, just minds. Hartwell wasn't just fighting a system. He was fighting a living consciousness, built from trauma, perfected through obedience, and fed by memory. And every time he spoke about it, he could feel it reactivating inside him, whispering from some neural corner. This unit is destabilizing. Begin override protocol. Hartwell knew the system couldn't be fought with bullets or laws. It wasn't human. It was logic gone feral, obedience encoded into consciousness itself. But he found something in the wreckage of an old data center tied to the hollow. A directory labeled 7th Protocol. Inside, audio files, surveillance logs, and one chilling video. A young child, eyes blank, voice mechanical, repeating a phrase over and over. I am not myself. I am the result of treatment. I am not myself. I am the result of treatment. I am not myself. Hartwell traced the files to a company, Pax Veritas Research. On the surface, it was defunct. But underground, it had merged into one of the largest behavioral tech labs in the country. So he broke in. In their basement server room, he found the neural seed code, the origin pattern of the obedience system. He didn't try to erase it. That would trigger countermeasures. Instead, he rewrote a single string. Do not correct unless user requests. It was a gamble, but it might give people back choice. As he uploaded it, alarms blared. His nose bled. But for a moment, the humming stopped. The silence was deafening. For the first time in years, the voices stopped. Margaret's whispers faded. The nurse's mechanical calm dissolved into nothing. Hartwell felt a spark, like his mind was slowly uncoiling. But freedom came at a cost. The system fought back with invisible claws. His body betrayed him. Unseen tremors racked his limbs. His thoughts fragmented, memories leaking like sand through fingers. He knew this was retaliation, the obedience program's defense mechanism. Yet in that fragile break, others began waking up. Patients, survivors, voices once silenced, now speaking out loud, telling their stories, breaking the cycle. The underground network was exposed, splintered, vulnerable. Hartwell's sacrifice ignited a spark of rebellion across the hidden web. But the system wasn't dead. It had learned, adapted, waiting for its next opportunity. And somewhere in the shadows, the nurse still watches, waiting for the day the correction protocol resumes. Section 16, final section coming next. Before we continue, write in the comments below, twice, this phrase. I own my mind, not the program. This is more than just words. It's a signal, a lock, a key. To claim your freedom from unseen chains. You're no longer a bystander in this hidden war. You're a participant, a seeker, a breaker of the silence. Remember, truth is dangerous, but the greatest danger is remaining ignorant. Stand firm, stand aware, and remember, the deepest prisons are those we build inside ourselves. But the keys, they've always been in your hands.